The widow's hands trembled as she unwrapped the silk cloth from around her grandmother's gold locket, the last valuable thing she owned in this world. And she knew that selling it would break her heart, but watching her son starve would destroy her soul. Helena Barrett stood in the dusty street of Ouray, Colorado, feeling the autumn wind of 1882 bite through her threadbare shawl as she clutched the locket tighter. The mining town bustled around her with its usual chaos of prospectors, merchants, and cowboys passing through, but she felt utterly alone despite the crowd. Her son, Thomas, waited back in their tiny one-room shack on the outskirts of town, too weak from hunger to even complain anymore. That silence terrified her more than his previous cries ever had. She had tried everything. After her husband Daniel died in a mining accident 8 months ago, the company had offered her nothing. No compensation, no pension, just empty condolences and a suggestion that she might find work as a laundress. She had taken every job she could find, washing clothes until her hands bled, mending garments by candlelight until her eyes burned, even scrubbing floors at the saloon until the owner's wife complained that a respectable widow had no business in such an establishment. But work was scarce, and what little she earned barely kept them in their shack, let alone fed them properly. Thomas, only 6 years old, had grown gaunt and pale. His eyes, once bright and mischievous like his father's, had dulled with hunger. Yesterday, he had fainted while trying to help her carry water from the creek. That moment had shattered something inside Helena. She would not watch her child waste away. The general store loomed before her, its painted sign reading Morrison's Mercantile swaying in the wind. Mr. Morrison was known to buy gold and silver from miners, and she hoped he might take pity on her and offer a fair price for the locket. She needed enough to buy flour, beans, salt pork, and maybe some eggs. Enough to keep. Thomas fed for at least a month while she figured out something, anything, to change their circumstances. Helena pushed open the door, causing a small bell to chime. The store smelled of tobacco, leather, and coffee, scents that reminded her of better times when Daniel would bring home small treats on paydays. Mr. Morrison, a portly man with mutton chops and a perpetual scowl, looked up from his ledger. "Mrs. Barrett," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "What can I do for you today?" She approached the counter, her worn boots making soft sounds on the wooden floor. With shaking fingers, she unwrapped the locket and placed it on the scarred wood between them. The gold caught the afternoon light streaming through the window, gleaming with a warmth that seemed to mock her desperation. "I need to sell this," she said quietly, hating how her voice wavered. "It is real gold from my grandmother. There are small diamonds around the edge." Mr. Morrison picked up the locket, turning it over in his thick fingers. He opened it, revealing the tiny portraits inside. Helena's parents on their wedding day, painted in miniature with exquisite detail. He grunted, neither impressed nor dismissive. "I can give you $12, he said. Helena's heart sank. "Please, sir, it is worth far more than that. The gold alone and the workmanship, the diamonds." $12, he repeated firmly. "Take it or leave it. I have got a store to run, not a charity house." She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. $12 would buy food, but not enough. Not nearly enough to last while she searched for better work or figured out how to survive the coming winter. But what choice did she have? Before she could force the words of acceptance from her throat, the door chimed again. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor, accompanied by the jingle of spurs. A man's voice, deep and warm, spoke behind her. "Pardon me, madam, but I could not help overhearing. That is a mighty fine piece of jewelry you have got there." Helena turned to find herself looking up at a tall cowboy, and despite her distress, something in her chest tightened at the sight of him. He stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build evident even beneath his dust-covered shirt and leather vest. His face was tanned and weathered from years in the sun, with strong features that might have seemed harsh except for the kindness in his eyes. Those eyes were a striking gray-blue, like storm clouds over the mountains, and they regarded her with genuine concern. He held his hat in his hands respectfully, revealing dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. He could not have been much older than 30, perhaps 28 or 29, and there was something about the way he carried himself that spoke of both strength and gentleness. "I am sorry, I did not mean to intrude on your business," he said, his voice apologetic. "But if you are selling that locket, I would like to make you an offer." Mr. Morrison scowled. "Now see here, Owen Lewis, I was conducting a transaction." "You were trying to rob a desperate woman," Owen Lewis interrupted, his tone still polite but with an edge of steel. "That locket is worth at least $50, probably more to the right buyer." Helena stared at him, her heart pounding. $50 would change everything. But why would a stranger intervene on her behalf? Owen looked at her, and his expression softened even further. "Madam, would you accept $60 for it? I have been looking for a gift for someone special, and this piece is exactly the kind of thing I have been hoping to find." 60. Helena could barely form the word. It was more money than she had seen in months. "Sir, that is very generous, but I cannot." "Please," he said gently. "I insist. And honestly, you would be doing me a favor. I have been searching every town from here to Denver for something this nice." She looked into his eyes, searching for deception or mockery, but found only sincerity. And beneath that, something else, a deep sadness that seemed to mirror her own. Whatever his reasons, they were genuine. "All right," she whispered. Thank you so much." Owen pulled a worn leather wallet from his vest and counted out $60 in bills and coins, placing them carefully on the counter. Helena gathered the money with trembling hands, tears spilling down her cheeks despite her efforts to maintain composure. "You are very kind, Mr. Lewis," she managed to say. He picked up the locket with surprising delicacy for such large hands, studying it with what seemed like genuine appreciation. "It is a beautiful piece. Your grandmother had fine taste." "She did," Helena agreed, wiping her eyes. "I am sorry, I am not usually so emotional. It is just, things have been difficult." "No need to apologize, madam. These are hard times for a lot of folks." He glanced at Mr. Morrison, who was glowering at both of them. "Do you need to purchase supplies?" "I am happy to help you carry anything heavy." The offer was so unexpected, so genuinely kind that Helena felt fresh tears threatening. Yes, I need to buy food for my son and myself, but I can manage." "I would be honored to help," Owen said simply. For the next half hour, Helena moved through the store in a daze, selecting items she had not been able to afford in weeks. Flour, cornmeal, beans, rice, salt pork, bacon, dried apples, coffee, sugar, even some peppermint sticks for Thomas. Owen carried the growing pile of goods without complaint, occasionally suggesting items she might have overlooked. "Winter is coming," he noted. "You might want some extra lamp oil, and these wool blankets are on sale." She hesitated, mentally calculating her funds, but he was right. The shack was drafty, and their current blankets were thin and worn. She added 2 heavy wool blankets to the pile. When Mr. Morrison tallied everything up, Helena still had $15 left from the 60. It felt like a fortune. The storekeeper grudgingly helped pack everything into crates, and Owen lifted them as though they weighed nothing. "Where are you staying, Mrs. Barrett?" he asked as they stepped out into the street. "Just outside town to the east, the small shack near Cascade Creek." She felt embarrassed admitting to such humble lodgings, but he only nodded. I know the place. Let me get my horse and wagon. It is too much to carry that far. I have taken enough of your time. Madam, please, it would ease my conscience to know you and your supplies got home safely." She relented, waiting while he strode down the street to the livery. Helena watched him go, puzzled by this stranger's kindness. In her experience, people in Ouray minded their own business, especially when it came to the struggles of a widow. Yet here was this cowboy, spending his money and his time to help her without asking for anything in return. Owen returned shortly with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 strong horses. He loaded the crates efficiently, then helped Helena up onto the seat with a gentle hand. As they rode through town, she became acutely aware of him beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "Have you been in Ouray long, Mr. Lewis?" she asked, more to break the silence than from curiosity. "Just passing through," he said. "I have been working ranches down south near Durango, but I am heading north for the winter. Heard there might be work in Gunnison. That is a hard ride this time of year. I have made harder ones." He glanced at her. "What about you? Are you from Ouray originally?" "No, my husband and I came here 3 years ago from Kansas. He heard the mines were hiring and we thought." She trailed off, the old dream of prosperity seeming foolish now. "We thought we could build a good life here." "I am sorry for your loss," Owen said quietly. "Morrison mentioned you are a widow. That must be terribly difficult, especially with a child to care for." "Thomas is 6. He is a good boy, very brave." Her voice caught. "Too brave. He never complains even when—" She stopped, unable to continue. Owen said nothing, but she felt his understanding in the silence. The shack came into view, and Helena felt a familiar shame at its condition. The roof sagged, the walls were unpainted and weathered, and the whole structure looked like a strong wind might blow it over. But it was home, and she kept it as clean as possible. Owen pulled the wagon up to the door and began unloading the crates. Helena hurried inside, where Thomas lay on the narrow cot they shared, his small body curled under a thin blanket. "Thomas, sweetheart, I am home and I brought food," she said, kneeling beside him. The boy's eyes opened and he tried to smile. "Mama." "Yes, baby, and we have a visitor who helped us. Can you sit up and say hello?" Thomas struggled to a sitting position, and Helena's heart clenched at how thin he had become. His clothes hung on his frame, and his cheeks were hollow. But his eyes brightened with curiosity as Owen appeared in the doorway, carrying a crate. "Hello there, young man," Owen said warmly, setting down the crate. "You must be Thomas. Your mother has been telling me about you." "Hello, sir," Thomas said politely, his voice weak but clear. Owen made several trips, bringing in all the supplies. Helena noticed him taking in the sparse conditions of the shack with a quick glance, but he made no comment. When everything was inside, he tipped his hat to her. "I will be going now, Mrs. Barrett. You take care of yourself and your boy." "Wait," Helena said impulsively. "Please, will you not stay for supper? It is the least I can do to thank you." Owen hesitated, and for a moment she thought he would refuse. Then he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his weathered face into something almost handsome. "I would be honored, madam." She set about preparing a meal with an enthusiasm she had not felt in months. Real bacon sizzling in the pan, beans soaking, fresh bread that she could make with the flour and lard. Thomas perked up at the smells, sitting up straighter on the cot. Owen settled on the floor near Thomas, his long legs stretched out. "So, Thomas, what do you like to do for fun?" The boy considered this seriously. "I like to catch frogs at the creek, and Mama has been teaching me my letters." "Reading is important," Owen agreed. "Can you read any words yet?" Thomas nodded proudly. "I can read dog and cat and boy and lots of others." "That is mighty impressive for a 6-year-old." While Helena cooked, She listened to Owen and Thomas talk. The cowboy had an easy way with her son, treating him with respect rather than condescension. He told stories about horses he had known, carefully editing out anything too rough for young ears, and Thomas listened with rapt attention. When the food was ready, they sat together on the floor, using the overturned crate as a table. Helena watched Thomas eat with an appetite she had not seen in weeks, and tears pricked her eyes again. This simple meal, made possible by Owen's generosity, was saving her son's life. "This is delicious, Mrs. Barrett," Owen said. "Best meal I have had in weeks." "You are kind to say so, though I am sure you have eaten far better." "Honestly, I have not. Trail cooking gets mighty monotonous, and most of the ranch hands I have worked with could not cook worth a damn. Pardon my language." Thomas giggled at the slip, and even Helena found herself smiling. After they ate, Owen helped clean up despite her protests. The evening was growing dark, and Helena lit their one precious lamp, rationing the oil as always. In the warm glow, Owen seemed to fill the small space with his presence, yet it did not feel crowded. It felt strangely like having a family again. "I should head back to town," Owen said reluctantly. "I have got a room at the boarding house." "Of course. Thank you again, Mr. Lewis, for everything. You have been more kind than I can ever repay." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. "Mrs. Barrett, I wonder, would you mind if I called on you tomorrow? I will be in town a few more days, and I would like to check that you and Thomas are doing all right." Helena's heart skipped. "You would be welcome any time." "Then I will see you tomorrow if that suits you." After he left, Helena tucked Thomas into bed, giving him one of the peppermint sticks. The boy sucked on it happily, his cheeks already showing a hint of better color from the good meal. "I like Mr. Lewis, Mama," Thomas said sleepily. "He is nice." "He is very nice," Helena agreed, smoothing her son's hair. That night, lying beside Thomas in the darkness, Helena thought about Owen Lewis. She barely knew him, yet he had shown her more kindness in one afternoon than she had experienced in the 8 months since Daniel's death. And there had been something in his eyes when he looked at her, something that made her pulse quicken in a way she had not felt since she was a young woman courting her late husband. She pushed the thought away. Owen was passing through, heading north. He had helped them out of simple decency, nothing more. She would be a fool to read anything else into it. Still, as she drifted off to sleep, she found herself looking forward to seeing him again. Owen returned the next day around mid-morning, riding up on a handsome chestnut gelding. Helena had been hanging laundry, the sheets and clothes she had washed in the creek that morning, and she felt self-conscious in her faded work dress with her hair tied back in a simple bun. But Owen smiled when he saw her as though she were dressed in silk. "Good morning, Mrs. Barrett." "I hope I am not calling too early." "Not at all. Thomas and I have been up since dawn. He is inside working on his letters." Owen dismounted, holding something wrapped in brown paper. "I brought some things from town, just a few items I thought you might need." "Mr. Lewis, you have already done so much. Please call me Owen, and this is nothing, truly." He handed her the package. Inside, Helena found 2 thick wool socks for Thomas, a jar of honey, and a small book of children's stories. Her throat tightened with emotion. "Owen, this is too much." "The socks are practical. Winter is coming, and a boy needs warm feet. The honey is good for health, and the book, well, Thomas should have stories. Every child should." Thomas came running out at the sound of Owen's voice, his energy much improved after a night of decent food and rest. "Mr. Lewis, did you bring your horse?" "I sure did. Would you like to meet him? His name is Thunder." The boy's eyes went wide. "Really?" For the next hour, Owen let Thomas pet and brush Thunder, teaching him how to approach a horse safely and how to read its moods. Helena watched from the doorway, her heart swelling at the sight of her son so animated and happy. Owen was patient and kind, never once showing impatience with Thomas's endless questions. When the boy finally tired, Owen carried him inside and settled him on the cot with the new storybook. "Why do not you practice reading this while I talk to your mama for a bit?" Thomas agreed eagerly, already sounding out the words on the first page. Owen and Helena stepped outside, walking slowly toward the creek. The autumn air was crisp and clear, the aspens on the mountainsides turning gold and orange. For a few moments neither spoke, just walked side by side. "He is a good boy," Owen said finally. "You have done well with him, especially under such difficult circumstances." "I am trying. Some days it feels like I am failing." "You are not failing. You are surviving, and that takes more strength than most people ever need to find." They reached the creek, where water burbled over smooth stones. Helena sat on a fallen log and Owen settled beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Can I ask you something?" Helena said hesitantly. "Of course." "Why are you being so kind to us? You do not know us. We are nothing to you." Owen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the water. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. 5 years ago I had a wife, Sarah. We had been married just 2 years and she was expecting our first child. I was working a cattle drive trying to earn extra money before the baby came. While I was gone, there was a fire. The cabin we lived in burned down. She did not make it out. Helena's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Owen, I am so sorry. I was not there when she needed me. I was off chasing wages when I should have been home protecting my family." His jaw clenched. "After that, I could not settle anywhere. I have been drifting ever since, taking work where I find it, never staying long enough to put down roots. But I have also never forgotten what it feels like to lose everything, to be alone and helpless." He turned to look at her, his gray-blue eyes intense. "When I saw you yesterday, trying to sell your grandmother's locket for a fraction of its worth just to feed your son, I saw Sarah. Or maybe I saw the chance to do for someone else what no one could do for her. I do not know. I just knew I had to help." Helena reached out and gently touched his hand. "You are a good man, Owen Lewis." His hand turned, capturing hers. His palm was calloused from years of ranch work, but his touch was gentle. "I do not know about that, but I do know that meeting you and Thomas. It is the first time in 5 years that I have felt anything other than empty." They sat like that, hands joined, listening to the creek and feeling something fragile and precious growing between them. Helena knew she should be cautious. She had known this man for barely a day. But her heart, so long frozen in grief and fear, was beginning to thaw. Owen came every day for the next week. He brought firewood, chopped and stacked it beside the shack. He repaired the worst holes in the roof, replacing shingles and nailing down loose boards. He fixed the door so it closed properly and sealed the gaps in the walls with mud and straw to keep out the winter cold. And every day he spent time with Thomas, teaching him about horses and cattle, telling him stories, reading with him. Helena found herself watching for his arrival each morning, her heart lifting at the sight of him riding up the path. They talked for hours, sharing their histories, their dreams, their sorrows. She learned that he had grown up on a small ranch in Texas, the youngest of 4 brothers. She learned that he loved the mountains but missed the wide open plains of his youth. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that could make her laugh even on hard days. He learned about her childhood in Kansas, daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress. He learned that she had loved Daniel, but that their marriage had been more about partnership than passion. He learned that she dreamed of giving Thomas a better life, with education and opportunities. The attraction between them grew undeniable. Helena found herself acutely aware of Owen's presence. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he worked, the sound of his laugh, the kindness in his eyes when he looked at her son. And sometimes, when he thought she was not looking, she caught him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. On the 8th day, Owen did not come in the morning. Helena tried not to worry, busying herself with chores, but by afternoon she was genuinely concerned. Thomas kept asking where Mr. Lewis was, and she had no answer. As evening approached, she finally saw him riding up the path, but something was different. He led a second horse behind Thunder, a gentle-looking mare with a white blaze on her face, and the wagon was loaded with more supplies. Helena stepped out to meet him, relief and confusion warring in her chest. "Owen, is everything all right?" He dismounted, and she saw nervousness in his expression, something she had never seen before. "Helena, I need to talk to you about something important." They had moved to first names days ago, but hearing hers on his lips still sent a shiver through her. "Of course." "Thomas, stay inside for a moment, please." The boy obeyed, though she could see his curious face peeking through the window. Owen tied the horses and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Helena, I have been doing a lot of thinking this past week, about my life, about what I want, about what matters, and I have come to some conclusions." Her heart pounded. "What conclusions?" "I have been running for 5 years, telling myself I was honoring Sarah's memory by staying unattached, by not risking my heart again. But that is not what I have been doing. I have been hiding. I have been too afraid to live because living means risking loss." He squeezed her hands gently. "Then I met you and Thomas, and for the first time since Sarah died, I felt alive again. I felt hope." "Owen, let me finish, please. I know we have not known each other long. I know this might seem sudden or crazy. But I am 30 years old, and I have learned that life is too short and too uncertain to waste time when you find something real." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Helena. I love your strength, your courage, your devotion to your son. I love how you have survived when others would have given up. I love talking with you, being near you, seeing you smile. And I hope that maybe you feel something for me too." Tears streamed down Helena's face. "I do. I did not think I would ever feel this way again, but I do. I love you too." The joy that blazed in Owen's eyes was like sunrise. "Then marry me. Let me take care of you and Thomas. Let me be the husband you deserve and the father he needs. I know I am not rich, but I am a hard worker. I have saved money over the years. We could buy a small ranch, raise cattle, build a real home. We could be a family." Helena wanted to say yes. Every fiber of her being wanted to throw herself into his arms and accept, but fear held her back. "Owen, I have nothing to bring to a marriage. No dowry, no land, nothing but a sick child and debts I can barely pay. You would be taking on a burden." "You are not a burden. You are a blessing, and Thomas is a gift, not an obligation." Owen's expression turned fierce. "I want this, Helena. I want you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and sit across from you every evening. I want to watch Thomas grow up and teach him to ride and rope. I want to give you both the life you should have had. Please say yes." She looked into his eyes and saw her future, a future she had thought was lost forever. Security, love, partnership, home. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. Helena melted into the kiss, her first since Daniel's death, and it felt right. It felt like beginning again. Thomas burst out of the shack. "Are you getting married? Is Mr. Lewis going to be my papa?" Owen released Helena and knelt down to the boy's level. "If that is all right with you, Thomas, I would be honored to be your papa. I promise I will take good care of you and your mama." Thomas threw his arms around Owen's neck. "I want you to be my papa. I want it so much." The three of them stood together in a tight embrace, and Helena felt the pieces of her broken heart beginning to knit together. This was not the life she had planned, but it was better than anything she had dared to hope for. That evening, Owen explained his plans. He had used the week to make inquiries and arrangements. There was a small ranch for sale about 20 miles north, near the town of Ridgway. The owner had died, and his widow was moving east to live with family. The property included a sturdy house, a barn, good grazing land, and a small herd of cattle. Owen had enough saved to make the purchase. "We can be married as soon as the paperwork for the ranch is finalized," he said. "I talked to the preacher in town, Reverend Matthews. He said he could perform the ceremony whenever we are ready." "How soon?" Helena asked. 2 weeks if all goes smoothly with the ranch sale." 2 weeks. It seemed impossibly fast and yet agonizingly slow. Helena nodded. "Then we have a lot to prepare." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Owen made the final arrangements for the ranch, signing papers and transferring funds. Helena worked on altering the one decent dress she owned, a dark blue cotton that had been for Sundays before Daniel died. With some creative stitching and the addition of lace that Owen bought her, it would do for a wedding dress. The women in town, hearing of the impending wedding, surprised Helena with their generosity. Mrs. Chen from the laundry gave her a beautiful embroidered handkerchief. The baker's wife made a small wedding cake. Even Mr. Morrison, grudgingly, offered a discount on some household items they would need for the new house. Thomas was beside himself with excitement, talking endlessly about the ranch and the horses and having a papa again. Helena watched her son bloom with happiness, gaining weight and color and energy. Love and security were healing him faster than any medicine could. Owen spent his days finishing preparations, but came to the shack every evening. He and Helena would sit outside while Thomas slept, talking about their future, making plans and stealing kisses in the darkness. Helena discovered that Owen was an attentive and passionate man, and she found herself longing for their wedding night with an intensity that both surprised and delighted her. "I never thought I would feel this way again," she confessed one evening, nestled in his arms. "After Daniel, I thought that part of my life was over." "How do you feel?" Owen asked, his voice low and warm against her ear, alive, desired, hopeful. She turned to look up at him. "Loved. You are loved, Helena, more than I can possibly express in words." He kissed her then, deeper and more urgent than before, and she responded with equal passion. They had to restrain themselves, mindful of propriety and Thomas sleeping nearby, but the promise of what was to come hung between them like sweet tension. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning in the small church in Ouray. Thomas stood beside them, dressed in new clothes Owen had bought him, beaming with pride. Reverend Matthews performed a simple but heartfelt ceremony. Helena wore her altered blue dress with wildflowers in her hair that Thomas had picked that morning. Owen wore a new black suit, looking handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal attire. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed Helena with such tenderness and joy that she felt tears slip down her cheeks. The small group of townspeople who had gathered applauded, and Thomas cheered. They celebrated with cake and coffee in the church hall, then loaded the wagon with all of their possessions, which fit easily since neither Helena nor Thomas had much. The mare that Owen had bought, which he had named Daisy and given to Helena as a wedding gift, was tied behind the wagon alongside Thunder. As they rode north toward Ridgway and their new home, Helena sat beside Owen on the wagon seat with Thomas between them. The boy chattered excitedly, but Helena was quiet, absorbing the magnitude of how much her life had changed in just 2 weeks. Owen reached over and took her hand. Having second thoughts, Mrs. Lewis. The new name sent a thrill through her. Not one. I am simply overwhelmed by how blessed I am. We are both blessed. The ranch, when they arrived, was more than Helena had dared to imagine. The house was modest but well built, with 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen with a cast iron stove, and even glass windows. The barn was sturdy, the corrals in good repair, and the cattle, about 50 head, looked healthy and strong. Owen lifted Thomas down from the wagon, then turned to help Helena. Instead of just offering his hand, he swept her up into his arms, making her gasp with surprise. "What are you doing?" "Carrying my bride over the threshold," he said with a grin. "It is tradition." He carried her into the house, and Thomas followed, exploring every corner with delighted exclamations. The furniture was simple but functional, left behind by the previous owner. There was a table with chairs, a rocking chair by the fireplace, beds with real mattresses, even curtains on the windows. "Owen, it is wonderful," Helena breathed. "It is ours," he said. "Our home, our fresh start." That night, after Thomas was tucked into his own bedroom, something that thrilled the boy beyond measure, Helena and Owen finally had their wedding night. In the larger bedroom, Owen lit a lamp and turned to his new wife with desire and tenderness in his eyes. "I have dreamed of this," he said softly, approaching her. "Of you." Helena's hands trembled slightly as she began unbuttoning her dress, but Owen stilled them with his own. "Let me," he whispered. He undressed her slowly, reverently, kissing each bit of skin as it was revealed. Helena had been self-conscious about her body, thin from months of deprivation, but Owen looked at her as though she were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Perfect," he murmured. "You are perfect." She helped him out of his clothes, less practiced but equally eager, and when they finally came together in the bed, it was with a passion and connection that left them both breathless. Owen was tender and patient, making sure she found pleasure before seeking his own, and Helena discovered depths of feeling she had not known existed. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Owen stroking her hair while she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "I love you," she said. "I know I have said it before, but I need you to know how much. You saved us, Owen. You saved Thomas and me." "You saved me too," he replied. "I was just existing before I met you, not living. You gave me a reason to stay in one place, to build something, to hope again." He kissed the top of her head. "We saved each other." The first months of their marriage were both challenging and joyful. Owen worked the ranch from dawn to dusk, tending cattle, repairing fences, preparing for winter. Helena threw herself into making the house a home, sewing curtains and quilts, planting a garden, learning to cook on the larger stove. Thomas thrived, gaining weight and strength, helping with small chores and learning to ride Daisy under Owen's careful instruction. Winter came hard to the Colorado mountains, but the house was warm and well stocked. Owen had laid in plenty of firewood and provisions, and the cattle survived the cold months better than expected. During the long winter evenings, they would sit by the fire together, Helena mending or knitting while Owen carved wooden toys for Thomas, and they talked about everything and nothing. One night in January, with snow piling high outside and the fire crackling warmth, Thomas fell asleep in Owen's lap while being read to. Helena watched her husband carefully lift their son and carry him to bed, tucking him in with such fatherly care that her heart swelled. When Owen returned, he found her wiping tears from her eyes. "What is wrong, sweetheart?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is so right it almost frightens me. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this happiness to be taken away." Owen pulled her into his arms. Life does not come with guarantees, I know that better than most. But I promise you this, I will spend every day I have making sure you and Thomas know you are loved and protected. That is not going to change. I know. I do know that. It is just hard to believe this is real sometimes. He kissed her forehead. It is real. We are real. This family is real. As winter gave way to spring, Helena discovered she was pregnant. The realization came one morning in late March when she was unable to keep down her breakfast. At first, she worried it was illness, but as the days passed and certain signs became unmistakable, joy replaced her concern. She told Owen that evening after Thomas had gone to bed. He had just come in from checking on a cow that was about to calve, and he was washing up when she approached him. "Owen, I have something to tell you." Something in her tone made him turn, water still dripping from his hands. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am better than all right. I am. We are. I am going to have a baby." For a moment, Owen just stared at her, and Helena felt a flutter of worry. She knew about Sarah and their lost child. Would this bring back painful memories? Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "A baby. We are having a baby. Yes. Probably in late October or early November, I think." Owen let out a whoop and grabbed her, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around before carefully setting her down, suddenly worried. "I am sorry. I should not have done that. I should be gentle. Are you feeling all right? Do you need to sit down? Should I get the doctor?" Helena laughed, delighted by his concern. "I am fine. I am just pregnant, not ill. But yes, we should probably have Dr. Reynolds check on me soon. I will ride into town tomorrow. Tonight you rest." He led her to the rocking chair and settled her in it as though she were made of glass. "Does Thomas know?" "Not yet. I wanted to tell you first." They told Thomas the next morning at breakfast, and the boy was ecstatic. "A baby, a real baby. Will it be a brother or a sister? We will not know until the baby comes," Helena explained. "But either way, you will be a big brother." "I will teach the baby everything," Thomas declared. "How to ride and rope and read and everything." Owen smiled. "I am counting on it, son." The months of Helena's pregnancy were peaceful and productive. The ranch prospered under Owen's management. He bought more cattle, expanded the grazing area, and even hired a young ranch hand named Billy to help with the work. Thomas, now 7, took his role as big brother to be seriously, helping Helena with household tasks and talking to her growing belly. Owen was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worried about Helena's health and comfort. He built her a new rocking chair for the baby's room, carved a beautiful cradle from pine, and made sure she had everything she could possibly need. In late October, Helena's labor began. Owen sent Billy racing to town for Dr. Reynolds and Mrs. Chen, who had experience as a midwife. He stayed with Helena, holding her hand and wiping her forehead, while Thomas waited anxiously in the other room. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Owen never left her side, his face drawn with worry and helplessness. But finally, as the sun was setting, Helena gave one last push, and the sharp cry of a newborn filled the room. "It is a boy," Dr. Reynolds announced, cleaning the baby and wrapping him in a blanket. "A healthy boy." Owen looked at his son, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered face. When Dr. Reynolds placed the baby in Helena's arms, Owen sat beside them on the bed, his arm around his wife, staring at the tiny red face of his child. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you, Helena." "Thank you for this gift." Helena, exhausted but radiant, looked up at her husband. What should we name him? They had discussed names, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at their son, Owen said, "What about Daniel, after your first husband? He gave you Thomas, and I think he deserves to be remembered." Fresh tears spilled from Helena's eyes. You would do that. Daniel was a good man who loved you and gave you a son. I am not threatened by his memory. I think it would be right to honor him." "Then Daniel Owen Lewis it is," Helena agreed. When Thomas was allowed in to meet his baby brother, he approached cautiously, his eyes wide. "He is so small." "You were this small once," Helena said. "Would you like to hold him?" They settled Thomas in the rocking chair and carefully placed baby Daniel in his arms, supporting them both. Thomas looked down at the baby with such love and wonder that Helena and Owen exchanged teary smiles. "I will protect him always," Thomas declared solemnly. "I am his big brother." The years that followed were the happiest of Helena's life. The ranch continued to prosper, growing from 50 head of cattle to over 200. Owen's reputation as an honest, hard-working rancher spread, and they became respected members of the Ridgway community. Thomas grew into a responsible and capable young man, learning ranching from Owen and never forgetting that Owen had chosen to be his father. Baby Daniel grew into an energetic toddler, then a curious child, adored by his entire family. When Daniel was 3, Helena became pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Samuel and Grace. Owen was beside himself with joy and terror at having 3 small children to care for. But Helena had never seen him happier than when he sat in his chair with a twin on each knee and Daniel and Thomas at his feet, reading stories or teaching them songs. As the children grew, the house rang with laughter and life. Helena would sometimes stand in the kitchen, watching her family, and marvel at how far she had come from that desperate day in Ouray when she had sold her grandmother's locket. One evening, when Daniel was 5 and the twins were 2, Helena was putting away some of Owen's things when she found something wrapped in cloth in the bottom of his drawer. Curious, she unwrapped it and gasped. It was her grandmother's locket. Owen came into the room and saw what she held. He smiled sheepishly. "I wondered when you would find that. You kept it all this time." "Of course I kept it. I told you I bought it for someone special, and I did. I bought it for you." Helena turned the locket over in her hands, and Owen came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Open it," he said. She did and found that the miniature portraits of her parents had been carefully preserved, but added to them were new, tiny photographs. On one side, Thomas and Daniel. On the other, Samuel and Grace. "How did you?" "I took it to a photographer in Denver last time I was there on business. I wanted you to have your family history and our family together." Helena turned in his arms, the locket clutched to her chest. "Owen Lewis, how did I get so lucky to find you?" "I think I am the lucky one. You gave me back my life, my purpose, my heart. You gave me everything." They kissed, tender and sweet, while the sounds of their children playing drifted in from outside. That night, lying in bed with Owen's arms around her, Helena thought about the path that had brought her to this moment. The loss of Daniel, the desperate poverty, the fear and struggle. And then Owen, riding into her life like something out of a storybook, buying her last possession and returning it with so much more. "What are you thinking about?" Owen murmured, half asleep. "Just how one moment of kindness can change everything. If you had not stopped in that store that day, if you had not cared enough to help a desperate stranger, I would have missed out on the greatest blessing of my life," Owen finished. "Some things are just meant to be, Helena. The moment I saw you, something in my heart recognized you. I was meant to be in that store that day. I was meant to find you and Thomas. I was meant to be here with you, with our family." "Do you ever think about Sarah?" Helena asked softly. It was a question she had asked before, secure enough in their love to know the answer would not hurt her. "Sometimes. I hope she would be happy for me, that she would approve of the life I have built. But mostly, I am grateful that loving her taught me how to love, so that when I found you, I knew what I had." Helena snuggled closer. "I love you, Owen, more every day. And I love you, my heart. Always." The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and hard work. Thomas, at 16, was nearly as tall as Owen and every bit as capable on the ranch. He had a natural way with horses and had started breaking and training them for extra income. Daniel, at 13, was the studious one, always with his nose in a book, dreaming of perhaps becoming a lawyer or teacher. The twins, Samuel and Grace, now 12, were inseparable and full of mischief. Helena, at 42, had a few strands of silver in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes, but Owen still looked at her the way he had on their wedding day. Their love had only deepened with time, weathering the inevitable challenges of ranching life, raising children, and building a legacy together. One spring evening, the whole family gathered on the porch to watch the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Thomas sat on the porch rail, Daniel leaned against a post reading, the twins played a game of jacks, and Helena and Owen shared the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders. "Papa, tell us again how you met Mama," Grace said, abandoning her game. It was a story they had heard dozens of times, but the children never tired of it. Owen looked down at Helena with a smile. "Well, I was riding through Ouray, just passing through like I had passed through 100 towns before, but something made me stop at Morrison's Mercantile that day. And inside, I saw the most beautiful woman I had ever laid eyes on trying to sell her grandmother's locket to feed her son." "That was me," Thomas interjected proudly. "I was the son." "You were, and you were skinny as a rail and needed feeding," Owen agreed. "Your mama was so brave and so desperate, and something in me just knew I had to help. So I bought that locket, paying what it was really worth, not the pittance Morrison was offering. And then you brought us food and fixed our house and made Mama smile again," Thomas added. "And then I married your mama and became the luckiest man in Colorado," Owen finished. "What happened to the locket?" Samuel asked, even though he knew the answer. Helena pulled it from around her neck, where she wore it always. "Your papa gave it back to me with pictures of all of you inside. It is my most precious possession, except for all of you." "That is sappy, Mama," Daniel said, but he was smiling. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the children drifted inside one by one to prepare for bed. Finally, only Owen and Helena remained on the porch, gently swinging and listening to the night sounds of the ranch. "You ever miss your old life?" Owen asked. Before all this," Helena considered the question seriously. "I miss Daniel sometimes, Thomas's father. He was a good man, and I wish he could have seen what a fine young man Thomas has become. But miss that life? Never. I was surviving then, barely. Now I am living. There is a world of difference. We have built something good here, have not we? We have built something extraordinary. A family, a home, a legacy. Our children will have opportunities we never had. They will never know the kind of desperation and hunger I knew in those dark months. And it is all because you cared enough to help a stranger." Owen turned to her, cupping her face in his weathered hands. "You were never just a stranger, Helena. From that first moment, you were my destiny. I was wandering lost until I found you. You gave me purpose and direction. You gave me a reason to plant roots instead of drifting. Every good thing in my life flows from meeting you that day." They kissed, still as passionate as newlyweds despite the years and the children and the everyday routine of ranch life. Their love had not dimmed but had grown richer and deeper, like good soil nurtured over time. Thomas, now 17, began courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Owen and Helena watched with amusement and nostalgia as their eldest son experienced the awkwardness and joy of young love. The girl, Emily, was sweet and sensible, and they approved of the match. "We are getting old," Helena said one night, watching Thomas ride off to visit Emily. "Speak for yourself, I am in my prime," Owen joked, but then he grew more serious. "We are getting older, yes, but we are getting older together, and I cannot imagine anything better. You think we should expand the house? If Thomas marries Emily, they might want to start their lives here on the ranch. I have been thinking the same thing. We could add another wing, give them their own space. This land is big enough for all of us." And so they began planning, not just for themselves, but for the next generation. The ranch that had started as a refuge for a desperate widow and her starving son was becoming a family dynasty. When Thomas was 19, he married Emily in a beautiful ceremony on the ranch. The whole community turned out to celebrate, and Helena cried happy tears as she watched her firstborn pledge his life to the woman he loved. Owen stood beside her, his own eyes suspiciously moist, his hand finding hers. "Our boy is a man now," he whispered. "Thanks to you. You taught him what it means to be a good man." We taught him together. A year later, Thomas and Emily presented them with their first grandchild, a baby girl they named Helena, and the cycle of life and love continued. Daniel, at 18, surprised them all by announcing he wanted to go to university in Denver to study law. Owen and Helena discussed it privately, worried about the expense and about losing their son to the city, but ultimately, they supported his dream. "We have always said our children would have opportunities," Helena reminded Owen. "We cannot hold him back from his education. I know, it is just hard to let go." "We are not letting go. We are letting him grow. There is a difference." So Daniel went off to Denver, returning for holidays and summers, regaling them with stories of his studies and city life. Helena was proud of how articulate and passionate he had become, clearly destined for important things. The twins, Samuel and Grace, remained at the ranch, both showing aptitude for ranching and a deep love of the land. By the time they were 16, Samuel was managing the horse breeding operation, and Grace was proving to have a head for the business side, keeping the books and managing sales. As Helena approached her 50th birthday, she sometimes could not believe how rich her life had become. The ranch now covered over 1,000 acres. They employed several ranch hands and had established a reputation for quality cattle and horses. Thomas and Emily had given them 3 grandchildren. Daniel was practicing law in Denver but came home often. The twins were thriving, and through it all, Owen remained her rock, her love, her partner in every sense. If anything, their love had grown stronger with time. They had weathered storms together, both literal and figurative. Harsh winters, difficult calving seasons, a prairie fire that nearly destroyed everything, an outbreak of fever that nearly took Grace, financial setbacks and personal losses. Through it all, they had leaned on each other, their bond only strengthening with each challenge overcome. On her 50th birthday, Owen surprised her with a party attended by the whole family and half the county. As Helena looked around at the gathering, at her children and grandchildren, at the friends they had made, at the home they had built, she was overwhelmed with gratitude. That evening, after everyone had left, Owen led her out to the porch where they had spent countless evenings over the years. He pulled something from his pocket and handed it to her. It was a photograph, carefully preserved and framed. The photograph showed Helena as she had been at 26, thin and desperate, standing outside the shack in Ouray with Thomas. She barely recognized herself. "Where did you get this?" she asked, shocked. "I hired a photographer to take it before we left Ouray all those years ago. I wanted to remember where we started, so we would never take for granted where we are now. Below the photograph, Owen had mounted a small brass plate with an engraving. The best investment I ever made, Ouray, Colorado, 1882. Helena laughed and cried at the same time. I looked so frightened. You looked brave. You were selling your most precious possession to save your child. That is not fear, that is courage. And you saw me and decided to help. Why, Owen? Really, why did you do it? He pulled her into his arms, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I have told you before, something in me recognized you. But also, I think I saw a chance at redemption. After losing Sarah, I felt like such a failure as a man, as a husband. I could not save her, but maybe I could save you. And in saving you, you saved me right back. We needed each other, Helena. We still do. They stood there under the stars, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built a love that had stood the test of time. The years continued their steady march. Helena and Owen grew older, their hair turning silver, their faces lined with the evidence of a life well lived. But their love remained constant, a flame that never dimmed. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary surrounded by family. Thomas and Emily now had 5 children. Daniel had married a woman from Denver, a teacher named Clara, and they had 2 children. The twins, Samuel and Grace, had both married. Samuel to a rancher's daughter from Gunnison and Grace to a kind young man who worked as a veterinarian. Between all their children, Owen and Helena had been blessed with 13 grandchildren. The ranch had become one of the most successful in the region, but Owen and Helena had begun the process of stepping back, letting Thomas and Samuel take over the day-to-day operations. They still helped where they could, but mostly they enjoyed the fruits of their decades of labor. On quiet evenings, they would sit on their porch, the same spot where they had spent countless hours over the years, and talk about their life together. You have any regrets? Helena asked one evening. Owen considered carefully. I regret the years I wasted drifting after Sarah died. If I had been braver sooner, I might have found you earlier, and we would have had more time together. We have had a good amount of time, and it is not over yet. No, it is not, he agreed. What about you? Any regrets? Only that I cannot go back and tell that terrified woman in Ouray that everything was going to be all right, that a tall cowboy was going to walk into Morrison's store and change her life forever. She smiled. But then, if I could tell her, she might not believe me. It does seem too good to be true. It is true, though. We are proof that miracles happen. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains they had called home for so many years. When Helena was 65 and Owen 67, they made the decision to fully retire, officially signing the ranch over to Thomas and Samuel to run jointly. They built a smaller house on the property, still on the ranch but separate from the main house, where they could live quietly and enjoy their remaining years. Thomas protested the move. This is your home, your ranch. You should stay in the main house. But Helena shook her head. We built that house for a family, and you and Emily have a family that needs the space. Your father and I want something smaller and easier to manage. Besides, we will just be over the hill. You cannot get rid of us that easily. The little house was perfect for them, cozy and comfortable, with a big porch and a view of the mountains. Helena filled it with photographs of their family, the locket still around her neck, and Owen filled it with love and laughter. They had been in their new house for about 3 years when Owen began having chest pains. Dr. Reynolds, now retired himself, recommended they see a doctor in Denver, but Owen refused. I am not spending my last years being poked and prodded by city doctors, he declared. I am an old cowboy, and old cowboys wear out eventually. "You are not that old," Helena protested, fear gripping her heart. "I am 70, sweetheart. That is a good long life, longer than most cowboys get, and every year of it with you has been a blessing. Do not talk like that. You are not going anywhere." But they both knew the truth. Owen's heart was failing, weakened by decades of hard physical labor and the natural course of time. He continued to slow down, his strength gradually fading, though his mind remained sharp, and his love for Helena never wavered. On a crisp autumn morning, 72-year-old Owen woke before dawn as he always had. He kissed Helena, who stirred beside him, and whispered, "I love you." "I love you too," she murmured, still half asleep. "Come back to bed, it is too early. In a bit. I just want to watch the sunrise." He went out to the porch, wrapped in a blanket, and settled into his rocking chair. Helena dozed for a while longer, then woke fully as the sun cleared the mountains. She got up to make coffee and found Owen still on the porch, the blanket around his shoulders, his eyes closed. "Owen." "Coffee is ready." He did not answer. Helena set down the coffee pot and went to him, her heart already knowing what her mind did not want to accept. Owen had passed peacefully, watching the sunrise over the mountains he loved, on the land he had built into a legacy, surrounded by the evidence of the life he and Helena had created together. Helena gathered her family around her, and they mourned the loss of the man who had been father, grandfather, friend, and partner. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch under a simple headstone that read, "Owen Lewis, beloved husband and father, 1812–1954. He lived with love." The grief was profound, and Helena felt as though part of her soul had been torn away. But she was not alone. Her children and grandchildren surrounded her with love, and she drew strength from the legacy she and Owen had built. In the months after Owen's death, Helena would sit on the porch of their little house and talk to him as though he were still there. She would tell him about the grandchildren's accomplishments, about the ranch's progress, about how much she missed him. One evening, Thomas found her there and sat beside her. He was now 53, with silver threads in his hair and grandchildren of his own. "How are you doing, Mama? I miss him," Helena said simply. "Every moment of every day, I know we all do. But I am also grateful," she continued. "Your father gave me 33 years of happiness. He saved us, Thomas. Do you remember how desperate things were before he came? I remember being hungry all the time. I remember you selling Grandma's locket. And I remember a tall cowboy who bought it and brought us food and became my papa." Thomas took her hand. He was the best father a boy could ask for, even though we did not share blood. He loved you as his own. He loved all of you, I know, and we were lucky to have him. They sat together, mother and son, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Helena lived for another 8 years after Owen's death, remaining active and engaged with her family until the very end. She was 73 when she passed away peacefully in her sleep, the locket still around her neck. They buried her beside Owen on the hill, her headstone reading, "Helena Lewis, beloved wife and mother, 1856–1929. She loved with courage." At her funeral, Daniel, now a respected judge, spoke about his mother's strength and resilience. Thomas spoke about her devotion and sacrifice. The twins spoke about her wisdom and love. And all of them spoke about the love story between Owen and Helena, a love that had begun with an act of kindness and had lasted beyond death. The ranch continued to thrive under the management of the Lewis descendants. Thomas's children took over from him, and their children after them. The little house where Owen and Helena had spent their final years together became a cherished family landmark, preserved exactly as they had left it. In the main house, now occupied by the 4th generation of the family, the framed photograph of young Helena standing outside the shack in Ouray hung in a place of honor. Below it, the story was written in beautiful script. In 1882, a desperate widow sold her last possession to feed her son. A cowboy bought it and returned with more. He returned with love, with hope, with a future. This is where our family began. And in a glass case beside the photograph rested the gold locket, open to display the miniature portraits and photographs it contained. A reminder of where they had come from, of the love that had built their legacy, and of the truth that sometimes one moment of kindness can change everything. The Lewis Ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to the love between a desperate widow and a wandering cowboy who found each other at exactly the right moment. Their story became family legend, passed down from grandparents to grandchildren, a reminder that love and kindness can transform lives. And though Owen and Helena were long gone, their love remained, embedded in every fence post, every building, every acre of land they had worked together. It remained in the values they had instilled in their children and grandchildren. It remained in the locket that became a family heirloom, passed down through the generations. Most of all, it remained in the simple truth that a cowboy had once seen a woman in need and chosen to help, not knowing that in saving her, he would save himself, and together they would build something that would last far beyond their lifetimes. Their love story had a beginning in a dusty mercantile in Ouray, Colorado in the autumn of 1882. But it had no ending because true love, the kind that transforms and endures, never really ends. It just continues, echoing through time, touching lives and proving that miracles do happen when you open your heart to them.